Do you know who your state senator is? Not your U.S. senator, your state senator. Like, can you name them by name? What's up, y'all? I'm State Senator Charlene Oliver. I represent the 19th Senate District here in Nashville, Tennessee. And if I look familiar to you, it's because I was the one that stood on business on my Senate desk in protest of racist congressional maps in Tennessee when they drew the lines after the Voting Rights Act was gutted. I'm also a strategist, a speaker, college professor, and movement leader, co-founder of the Equity Alliance. This past weekend, I was invited to speak on a panel by Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated to talk about, where we go from here in honor of Juneteenth weekend. So during this panel discussion, I was asked about where does the power still lie for us to make change? And I just asked a question to the audience, not to shame anybody, but just ask a real question. Show of hands, who here knows who their state senator is? And can you name them? And I kid you not, less than 20% of the room raised their hand. This is a room full of Black folks. And so here's the problem with this picture. The level of government with the tightest grip on our daily lives is the level of government that we pay the least attention to. A U.S. senator is like one of 100 people, but your state senator, like me, is one of 33 in the state of Tennessee. And Republicans hold so many of those seats in the state legislature that they can pass anything that they want without a single Democrat like me showing up to work. So there's nobody in the building that can actually stop them from doing what they're doing. Your state senator is deciding whether your child's school keeps its funding, what crimes get you arrested, and how many years you sit in a prison cell, whether your vote still counts the same after the maps are redrawn, what books your library decides to ban on the shelves, and what teachers teach, whether your community gets to elect someone who actually looks like them. The power that touches your life the most is the power you're watching the least. But here's the part that makes this really dangerous for us. When our community isn't at the table, we're on the menu. And I know you've heard that before. And the right, the extreme right, the religious right, the extremist right-wing MAGA, they understood this concept with real discipline. While most people are usually watching what's going on in Washington with Congress, big money groups and dark money groups were quietly in 2014 writing ready-made bills, model legislation, to hand over to state legislatures in southern states like Tennessee, Texas, Florida, Georgia, model legislation with the same copy to pass them all across the South. So that's why it was no coincidence that Republican-run states across the South called special sessions one after another after the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act just this past April. The extreme right figured out that winning a cheap, ignored legislative race for state senate or state representative in a census year actually buys you control over those districts for the next 10 years. And, running a state senate seat doesn't cost as much as it does to run for Congress. So it's cheap. These extreme right-wing legislators and the billionaires and special interests that bankroll them count on these offices being invisible, because when nobody's watching, nobody gets held responsible. And low accountability is exactly where you go when you want to sneak in unpopular bills people would never accept if they saw them coming, such as moving public dollars into private school vouchers, such as stripping away the state's only majority Black voting district during a special session, building Jim Crow 2.0 in broad daylight. How? Because everybody's too busy working 2 or 3 jobs, too distracted by content creators, or being told by Fox News that it's Biden and a Democrat's fault. Democracy in government runs on accountability, and accountability runs on names. You can't punish a state lawmaker you can't even call by name. When 80% of a room that I speak in can't even name the state senator casting these votes, the one tool you've got to hold them accountable, which is your vote, never deals the punch that it's supposed to land. They never feel it. So a rural white legislature can do some real damage to Nashville or Memphis and pay no price, because the people getting hurt can't even trace back to the person who did it. That's why the districts where nobody's paying attention produce the boldest, most reckless lawmakers, because there's no cost to it. The not knowing is the protection for them. So remember this. You may feel powerless about what's going on in our country right now. It's super divisive. It's super polarizing about national politics, especially because of that man sitting in the White House. And as individuals, you're mostly one voice out of hundreds of millions of people in the country. But then you carry that same apathy, that same cynicism, and that same helplessness into one arena where your voice is actually loud, where the electorate is small, the race is close, and your senator's office is 5 miles down the street. That's how Tennessee stays ranked 51st in voter turnout, dead last in the country. Because you're letting your state rep and your state senator win a primary by fewer than 3,000 votes, running unopposed in November, and then they walk into the legislature and let their most extremist ideas run wild, wreaking havoc on all of us with nobody holding them accountable. Knowing where your power actually resides is the first act of taking yours back. So when I say the real fight is in the South and state senators like me are literally the front lines of resistance for keeping this country from going off the rails, this is what I mean. So you best start knowing who your state senator is and getting on a first name basis with them. Because the opposition is terrified of losing power because they know how powerful your vote is. The real question is, do you?